The receptionist had already looked at him twice when Daniel Harper walked into the executive waiting area holding his daughter's hand. He wore the best shirt he owned, the cuffs slightly frayed, and carried a folder containing every certificate, reference, and recommendation he had earned over 12 years of work. Beside him stood 8-year-old Mia with a small purple backpack and a coloring book pressed against her chest. Daniel knew exactly how it looked. A man arriving at one of the most important job interviews of his life with a child beside him. He had called 3 babysitters that morning. One was sick, one never answered, and the third cancelled 10 minutes before he had to leave. Daniel had almost stayed home. Instead, he came anyway. Inside the glass office across the hall, CEO Rebecca Sloan glanced through the window, saw the child, and quietly decided the interview would be short. Then Mia spoke, and everything Rebecca thought she understood about Daniel changed. If you believe kindness still matters and that people deserve second chances when life gives them impossible choices, please like this video, leave a comment, share this story, and subscribe to Dad's Hope. Your support helps stories like this reach people who may need a reminder that someone's hardest day does not always reveal their weakness. Sometimes it reveals exactly who they are. Daniel was 39 years old and had been raising Mia alone for 5 years. His wife, Sarah, died after a sudden illness, leaving behind a little girl who still sometimes asked questions Daniel did not know how to answer and a life that had to keep moving even when he wanted it to stop. Daniel had once worked as an operations coordinator for a regional logistics company. He was good at it. He understood schedules, people, warehouse systems, deadlines, and the small problems that became expensive disasters when no one noticed them early. But after Sarah died, Daniel began turning down overtime and overnight shifts because Mia needed him at home. When the company restructured 2 years later, he was one of the first people cut. Since then, Daniel had taken whatever work he could find. Delivery routes. Temporary warehouse shifts. Weekend maintenance jobs. He never stayed unemployed for long, but nothing gave him stability. Some months were manageable. Others required careful choices between bills that all seemed equally important. The interview at Sloan Industries was different. The company was expanding its operations division and needed an experienced logistics supervisor. The salary was nearly double what Daniel had been making through temporary jobs. The position included health insurance, predictable hours, and paid leave. To Daniel, it was not simply a better job. It was the chance to stop living one emergency away from disaster. He had prepared for the interview for a week. Then the babysitter canceled. Mia noticed the panic in his face. She told him she could sit quietly. Daniel almost laughed at how confidently she said it. He packed her coloring book, headphones, a snack, and the little notebook she carried everywhere. He promised himself he would explain everything the moment he arrived. The receptionist was polite but surprised. Daniel apologized immediately and asked whether Mia could wait outside the interview room. The receptionist called upstairs. A few minutes later, Daniel and Mia were escorted to the executive floor. Rebecca Sloan was waiting. Rebecca had built Sloan Industries from a struggling family distribution business into a national company. She was respected for making fast decisions and rarely second-guessed herself. To her, management required reliability. People were paid to anticipate problems before they happened. When she saw Daniel arrive with a child, she made an assumption. If he could not arrange childcare for an interview, how would he manage responsibility for an entire operations team? She did not say it aloud. She did not need to. Daniel recognized the change in her expression immediately. He explained the cancelled sitter. Rebecca nodded. The interview began. Daniel answered every question well. He described how he once reorganized a warehouse dispatch system that reduced delayed shipments by nearly 20%. He explained how he handled conflict between drivers and supervisors. He identified weaknesses in a sample scheduling problem Rebecca placed in front of him. His answers were practical. Specific. Experienced. Still, Rebecca kept returning mentally to Mia sitting quietly by the window. Daniel sensed it. By the end of the interview, his confidence had faded. Rebecca closed his file. She thanked him for coming. Daniel knew that tone. He had heard it before. Professional. Polite. Final. He stood and gathered his folder. Mia closed her coloring book. Then she looked at Rebecca and asked whether her father had done something wrong. Rebecca paused. Daniel immediately told Mia it was fine. But Mia continued. She explained that her father had almost cancelled the interview because he did not want to bring her. She said he called everyone he knew that morning. She said he even asked the mother of one of her classmates, but she had already gone to work. Then Mia said something Rebecca was not prepared to hear. She said her father never missed anything important for her unless he absolutely had to, and he never missed work unless she needed him more. The room went quiet. Daniel looked embarrassed. Mia kept going. She told Rebecca that when her father worked late, he helped her with homework after coming home even if he was tired. When she got sick, he stayed awake beside her. When money was short, he pretended he was not hungry so she could have the last piece of pizza. Daniel gently asked her to stop. Rebecca did not. Rebecca looked at the folder again. Then at Daniel. The details she had interpreted as poor planning began to look different. He had not brought his daughter because he did not take the interview seriously. He had brought her because he refused to abandon either responsibility. Rebecca asked Mia what was inside the notebook she had been carrying. Mia hesitated, then handed it over. Inside were drawings, spelling lists, and several pages filled with small handwritten schedules. Monday, Dad interview practice. Tuesday, Dad warehouse shift. Wednesday, library homework. Thursday, job interview. Rebecca smiled for the first time. Mia had been tracking Daniel's job search because she knew how important it was. Then Rebecca noticed one page. At the top, Mia had written, "When Dad gets his new job." Underneath was a list. Fix the car. Buy new school shoes. Go somewhere with a swimming pool. Make Dad stop worrying. Rebecca looked away for a moment. She had spent years interviewing candidates with perfect resumes, polished answers, and carefully rehearsed confidence. Daniel had arrived carrying something else. Evidence of what responsibility looked like when there was no one else to share it. Rebecca did not offer him the job immediately. She believed that would be unfair to the other candidates. Instead, she changed the interview. She called in the operations director and asked Daniel to complete a second practical assessment. This time, the questions were harder. Daniel was given a simulated warehouse breakdown involving missed deliveries, absent workers, equipment failure, and an angry client. He studied the information for several minutes. Then he began reorganizing the schedule. He reassigned drivers. Moved one shipment to a different facility. Identified which delays could be communicated without losing the client. Built contingency time into the next shift. The operations director watched silently. When Daniel finished, the director asked how quickly he could start. Rebecca smiled. Daniel looked almost afraid to believe what he was hearing. He was offered the position 2 days later. Not because Mia spoke. Not because Rebecca felt sorry for him. Because once Rebecca looked past her assumption, Daniel proved he was the strongest candidate. The job changed their lives gradually. Daniel did not suddenly become wealthy. But for the first time in years, his income was predictable. He repaired the old car. He paid bills before the final notice arrived. He bought Mia the new school shoes from her notebook. Months later, he took her to a modest hotel with an indoor swimming pool for one weekend. Mia treated it like a luxury resort. Daniel spent most of the trip watching her laugh. At Sloan Industries, he quickly earned the respect of his team. He had spent years balancing work, parenting, emergencies, schedules, and limited resources. Managing a logistics department almost felt familiar. Within a year, Daniel introduced a flexible backup scheduling system that reduced last-minute staffing problems across the company. Rebecca eventually expanded the idea into a broader employee policy. Parents facing sudden school closures or childcare emergencies could request temporary remote work, shift adjustments, or emergency family leave without immediately fearing disciplinary action. Rebecca never forgot why. One afternoon, almost a year after Daniel's interview, Mia visited the office again for a company family event. She was taller. Still carrying a notebook. Rebecca asked whether she still made lists. Mia proudly showed her the newest page. It said, "Things Dad doesn't worry about anymore." Underneath were rent, groceries, car repairs, and school shoes. The final item was written in larger letters. Losing his job. Rebecca looked across the room at Daniel talking with his team. She realized how close she had come to rejecting him before learning anything that actually mattered. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who has ever been judged during a difficult moment, and subscribe to Dad's Hope. Sometimes a person does not need someone to lower the standard for them. They simply need one fair chance to prove they can meet it. Before we end, please comment, "Give people a fair chance," if you believe one difficult circumstance should never define someone's entire character. Years later, Daniel barely remembered the embarrassment of walking into that interview with Mia beside him. What he remembered was her tiny voice defending him when he had already accepted that the opportunity was gone. Mia remembered something different. She remembered sitting in a giant office, watching her father refuse to give up even when everything went wrong. And Rebecca remembered the lesson most clearly of all. She had almost rejected a good man because his struggle arrived in the room with him. That day taught her that responsibility does not always look polished. Sometimes it looks like a tired single father holding a resume in one hand and his daughter's hand in the other, refusing to abandon either one.